Hey, and welcome to Matt and Jess TV. I am Matt Roast here with Jessica Bun Bun, and this is our From Season 3, Episode 4 reaction and review. I understand fully if you're coming out of this episode with a ton of questions. Who is dead? Who is alive? Who is a puppet? What in the world is going on here?
Yeah, I think a lot of us came out with most of our questions about Jasper and where this puppet came from. Was this puppet already there and Christopher found this puppet? Did Christopher bring this puppet? Is the puppet being used by the monsters to be able to sort of control Christopher and now possibly Jade? All my questions are around Jasper at this point and why Jasper is as important as he is.
I will be honest here, very, very early in this video. Shows bringing on puppets are not typically my thing. It feels a lot to me often like we're in season 3, season 4 of a show, and they're sort of thinking, "Oh, how can we mix things up? Let's do an episode where everybody's a puppet." And I think a lot about this because Community has done this. I think even Glee has done this. I know this show is a little bit different, so I am counting on you guys in Fromville to redeem my puppet skepticism.
It's true. Puppets can come across as sort of like a bit cheeseball, but I don't feel like that's happening here. There are other shows, like we just covered the last season of Fargo, where they used puppets really well.
Yeah.
One of the best episodes of Fargo they've ever had. It was so well done. And I think here, with it being Fromville, which is all about your fears. Dolls and puppets, that has absolutely long been something that's a fear for many people. So it makes sense that this would come more into play. Jade is seeing visions of Jasper in the past. So, Jasper's got to be important, right? Victor saw Jasper down with the monsters. He's important.
These are the important things, and that this puppet, thankfully, does not seem to be a gimmick. There is a reason
Yes.
why we are seeing him. There's a reason why potentially he's going to be pretty important heading in to episode 5, but rest assured, we are here to try to magnify and glass this situation. That's apparently a verb now, but before
Nice.
we go any further, hit that subscribe button because there is so much more coverage coming here on From. And if you guys didn't know, this is a pretty incredible week for us when it comes to horror related shows here on the channel, because just over the past few days we've had a new episode of Grotesquerie on FX, plus the premieres of two brand new shows, one of them in Teacup. Certainly has some similarities to From in that you're dealing with mysterious entities, a small community, it's pretty scary. And then you've also got Sweet Pea, which is over on Stars with Ella Purnell. It's a really, really exciting new show, so check those out.
Yeah, especially Teacup. If you're into groups of people that are trapped somewhere,
Yeah.
you've got that in Teacup as well. And yeah, Sweet Pea, if you just want like a really great thriller horror for spooky season, it's a really great one as well. We're enjoying both these new shows quite a bit. And also follow us over on Patreon. We are covering the Penguin exclusively over there, and it's a great way to be able to help support Matt and I here at the channel. So thank you so much to everyone who has joined.
Thank you guys so much.
Okay, so let's get into the Jasper of it all. The times that I can remember seeing Jasper, and I have rewatched this show 3 times now, that I can remember, but I do have old lady brain, so guys, bear with me here. I remember seeing him with Christopher, of course, but we've also seen him briefly in Visions with Jade, where Jade has seen Christopher and Jasper, and we've seen Jasper down with the monsters when Victor and Tabitha were down below after she was like digging that hole in her basement. And it was like, oh man, you shouldn't be digging that hole. Now they're down with the monsters. And Jasper was there as well. So clearly he has a role to play. Now, I brought this up at the beginning. What is Jasper's role? And it feels, tinfoil hat to me, that Jasper is being used by Fromville or the monsters to be able to sort of puppeteer people. And that's sort of where we're going with it. This puppet is puppeting Christopher. And then now this puppet is looking to maybe puppet Jade.
I think if I'm going to focus in first and foremost on the Christopher part of this, I feel like there's this possibility that he came into this world with maybe puppeting as a hobby. I know some
Hmm.
people are like, "Oh, why would you use puppets?" And I'm not somebody who's ever made like a ton of sock puppets or something, but I'm somebody who likes to do weird voices and impressions. And so like the idea of me being like, "Hello, I'm a puppet." It feels like that is something that would be fun and endearing for Christopher to want to do, and it may be a way for him to express himself and to kind of have this vessel where he can go and communicate. And where I think this is going within the broader world of From, and something we've talked about a lot this season, and you even mentioned it earlier, a lot of what we have here are about worst fears. And maybe for Christopher, the manifestation of his own worst fears to not suddenly have any control. That Jasper or puppeting may have been something that he felt like he could express himself with. But if this puppet suddenly becomes the puppeteer, he loses all control. And that's a pretty terrifying proposition. And that's not something that goes down like cheeseball puppet lane at all. It's this thing that would be potentially very significant to him personally, is being taken from him and then being used against him.
Yeah, and when we first met Jade, that was the same sort of personality, someone who's in control of everything. He gets everything he wants, everything goes his way, and then all of a sudden that's being taken away from him, and he's kind of going down that same road that Christopher has gone down. Now, seeing this sort of past with Victor, where he's pulled out this suitcase and
Yeah,
he's with Sarah. Oh man, these scenes were so
they
good.
were
And,
great.
building this fort and him being like, yeah, I want you to be here with me because, what I'm about to do is really scary and you're the scariest person here. I know what he was trying to say, but it was so endearing that it was just like, hey, if you, the scariest person in town, can handle this, then that means that I'll be okay because you'll be the person that'll kind of protect me from all of this. And she does. She helps him get through all of this, get to some answers where he's actually remembering seeing Christopher talking to Jasper, and Jasper is talking back to him all the way across the room in another chair. So Victor really does have a lot of answers to some of this and a lot more information than he's been able to remember.
I loved this whole storyline. This is probably one of my favorites of the season so far, and I
Yeah.
think it's just because I have always been a Sarah defender. I
Mhm.
like that character. I just feel like, especially in season 2, they really didn't know what to do with her all that much. So the entire Sarah storyline was, let's just have everyone be mad at Sarah for the entire
Yeah.
season, which obviously I understand. It's just for a little while as a viewer, it gets tiresome. Here, having Victor, who is this very childlike character who still is dealing with a lot of repression and
Mhm.
never really getting to have a full childhood. He's sort of finding ways to sort of cling to this wherever he can. What's more childlike than building a blanket fort, confiding a secret with somebody else, somebody who you think is going to protect you from the proverbial monsters that are underneath the bed that we're all really afraid of when we're kids? And Victor, he's clearly repressed so many things like deep, deep down in the back of his brain here because he's so afraid of what's going to happen when they all rise to the surface. But what we're starting to see here is him come to this realization that, okay, if Jasper is someone or something that can puppet other people or control other people or impart some sort of information, then maybe we can't actually use this to our advantage. But then, lo and behold, the question then becomes, okay, well, then how can you sort of puppet the puppeteer who is puppeting other people?
Well, that's the thing. I mean, Boyd has this idea that he's going to try to catch one of the monsters, and
Yeah,
that hasn't happened yet. But if you can get the puppet, and Victor does know where the puppet is because he was underground, and that's the last place that he saw the puppet. If the puppet is still there,
yeah.
it's a dangerous mission, but he can get his hands on that puppet. Then if he can get this puppet talking, or Boyd can get this puppet talking, or anybody can get it talking, maybe they can get some sort of answers if they don't fall into it then turning it around and controlling them. I just feel like this episode gave us so much more background on Victor's mental state. Like, we
Yeah.
know some of what's happened, But hearing it from him and sort of seeing it where he's like, yeah, I was hiding. I came up. Everybody was dead. I didn't know what to do. This is the first time that I ever ran across, the boy in white. The dog was there. He wasn't able to bury everyone, so he took like a special thing from everyone and buried that. It was just so heartbreaking and just so kind and empathetic that he just wanted to be able to do something for these people, even at that age. And he was just like, but the only person that didn't have anything was Christopher.
Yeah, it was a very touching story because it reminded us all of, if you're somebody going through grief, how do you handle that? How do you process that? And he clings to these little memories of people. And we all know memories can sort of wash away over time, especially if you're intentionally trying to bury them. Like, that all was handled extremely well.
Yeah, especially at that age
Yeah.
and with that kind of isolation, because he said that he was alone for a long time after that. So it was like he was a child dealing with this much death, and then he's alone in his thoughts. It completely explains why he is now an adult and he's still in this frame of mind and couldn't get out of it.
One of the larger questions I'm also kind of left rattling around in my head is, who is the voice of reason, or, reason when it comes to these larger powers in Fromville? Because basically we have Jasper now. We have Thomas, who is calling from somewhere and is now also talking to Ethan in addition to Jim. And then you've got, at the end of season 1, the radio transmission voice. Right. So we've got like a few different outside voices. Are they all the same person, kind of just manipulated into different ways? Are these even people at all?
Yeah, whatever it is, it feels like it's all connected. If the town is trying to talk to people, it feels like it's all coming from one place, and it's coming through Jasper, it's coming through the phone that's connected to nothing, it's coming through the radio. They seem to know who everyone there is, and they're using people's guilt and fear to be able to try to control what is going on here and get them to do things or send messages, like the phone call that came into Ethan. It's like, hey, your mom is in trouble. She's coming in through this ambulance. And who is this? Oh, it's Thomas. And Jim comes and grabs the phone, and the minute that it's like, oh, before it's like, oh, hey, Dad, it's me. Then all of a sudden it's like, hey, Jim. I'm like, oh, this took a turn.
It took a very...
There's no more, hey, Dad, let me try to manipulate you. It's just like, hey, Jim.
I'm going to put more tinfoil on now on top of the other thing, because I've come up with a name for mysterious entity in my head. I'm going to call this the Seer, and I know there's about 2 million shows out there that have Seer, so this is not exactly original, but
it makes sense for this.
Yeah, it makes sense for this, and it makes sense for the idea that I've kind of had for a little while here, that everybody in Fromville has some sort of greater destiny in the real world, and in order to get to this real world, in order to do this, they have to sort of take a little bit of Ethan's idea. They have to fulfill this quest. They have to get through all of this suffering, and the Seer is the person who knows what this destiny is, and they've sort of plotted out whatever all these nightmares are that you have to go through first, and that collective person or entity is what is doing all of this sort of stuff, and also giving Jim the hey Jim treatment, which, by the way, how many more household-related objects is Jim going to destroy by the end of this season?
Listen, there has to be somebody who's really angry in this town. I mean, if I was in this town, I'd probably be that person. I'm just like, how is this happening? But like, he's taking it to this other level where he is, destroying things, ripping things off the wall. He's yelling at his kids. He's grabbing his kids. Like, it makes sense that there would be people that would be reacting that way, because that's not an abnormal reaction to be having in a stressful situation as much as this is. But of course, it's also really tough to watch.
It's really, really tough to watch. And that's why I'm hoping that now that we've had this reunion of Jim and Tabitha, like, at least this is off his plate for now. Because obviously not having Tabitha's a big contributing factor to a lot of that stress. So maybe now he can just focus on the idea that Thomas is calling him and the fact that they're in the worst town of all time. It's like, it's not a solution to all the problems, but it's a one step in the right direction.
It just feels like everybody who has come to this town is at some sort of crossroads, and everything that's coming in is almost like you have to deal with the things from your past to be able to move past these crossroads into your next step of life. And I think that that's something that's really relatable in general to everyone, that you get to this big next step in your life, and sometimes it brings things from your past that you haven't dealt with yet, and you need to deal with them so that you can move forward into other parts of your life.
And in order for some of these people to deal with this and move forward now, they have some new arrivals they also have to deal with. We have red shirt paramedics, first and foremost. What do we say about red shirt paramedics?
Bye. I mean, like, I had wondered if they were coming in to replace Christy, because it's like, oh, we're going to have more medical staff here.
Yeah.
Like, do we need 4 people? But no, they're gone right away. Ambulance rolls into town. One of the monsters is laying on the ground. Another trap, lots of traps this season, and gets them out of the ambulance. They're done. So I was like, okay, I feel a bit better.
I know.
Christy's going to be okay, which is great. I really like Christy a lot. So I was like, okay, they're not replacing her yet. But then it was so intense seeing, everybody trying to run out, get Tabitha out of there, Henry out of there. The monsters are everywhere. And to see that nurse roll up to Boyd and be like, hey, here's the keys. Here's your choice. You can take these people and save them, but you can't save Randall then. We're going to take Randall. So you are going to have to live with your choice. The monsters are continuing to push that idea on him of like, we're going to break you. You can't be in control of everything. So make a choice. He chooses to take the ambulance. And when he gets to Colony House and drops everybody off, there's this moment that you can see it on his face. And he's like, maybe I should go back and see if there's anything left of Randall that I'd be able to save. But in his mind, because he's been there so long now and he has seen what the monsters do, he's like, there's no saving him. There's no way. So by the time we get to the monsters have delivered Randall, worse for wear, but still alive, I was like, it was giving me House of the Dragon vibes. So anyone who hasn't read the books or watched the show, spoilers ahead. But there's this choice that one of the daughters is given, that she's like, oh, it's like, okay, you have 2 sons. We're going to kill one of your children, one of these sons. Which one do you want to live and which one do you want to die? An impossible choice. And they're like, and if you don't choose, they're both dying. She makes this horrible choice that she has to make. And she's like, okay, this one. So they decide, of course, to kill the other one. And they leave her for the rest of her shorter life, because she can't live with what she chose. This son that she knows that she chose to die. And every time she looks at this son, she just feels this overwhelming guilt that she cannot live with. And when I saw this with Randall, where it's like, oh, Randall's still alive. Cool. Boyd now has to live in this guilt that every time he looks at Randall and Randall looks at him, they both know that Boyd chose to let him die. It's so rough. It's grim.
It's so crazy that From has the cojones to do what House of the Dragon did not, and ended up making George R.R. Martin really upset. But look at you guys for going here, putting Boyd in this really horrible position. And also the fact that it's Randall, one of the more unhinged people in this town, having him be the person who's going to be like, you left me to die with Boyd. This is not great. This is going to be a really bad problem, which is why, once again, they're all trying to mess with Boyd. They're just trying to make this guy as miserable as possible.
Especially since, Randall is the most unhinged person there. And he is the person that, doesn't typically help out. So the fact that Boyd had come onto the bus and was like, hey, I need the bus for the night. I'm going to like try to figure out what's going on with these monsters so that I can find a way to trap one. Randall is actually extremely helpful
Yeah.
in this whole process. And it's like, listen, I've been watching them every single night. They have a routine. This one goes here. This one does this. This does this. And he's really, really helpful. Then the ambulance rolls up. Randall actually jumps into action and he is helpful. So the fact that he is finally kind of becoming helpful and part of this and, you know, actually wants to help save people, that's the time he's left behind. I can't imagine what that's going to do to him, where it's like, okay, cool. So I was right to not trust anybody or care about anybody because y'all don't care about me.
It's really setting up this pretty worrisome idea that we could have larger factions sort of going against each other potentially in a further way than what we've seen on the show so far. I mean, yeah, there has been plenty of conflict between people. I mean, we've also had, you know, the town versus colony house. Like, there's all these different elements where not everybody is always on the same page. But if Randall comes into this, it's like so unbelievably upset and has more people eventually on his side that Boyd's handling this the wrong way. Boyd's got to go, hey, you guys got a new cop in town. I'm not saying she's particularly great at her job from what we have seen in this episode, but she just turned up there. She doesn't really know what's going on.
Yeah, for sure. Randall could easily sow distrust to be like, hey, this is what you guys all trust Boyd to have your back. This is what he just did to me. And you guys can all see what he did to me. I mean, there was another moment there when he took the keys and got into the ambulance. I was like, is he just going to run them all over? Because it felt like he was just going to throw it into reverse and back over as many of those monsters as he could. And then, you know, grab Randall if he could. I thought he was going to have one moment where he's going to be like, you know what? Let's go.
One, I would have loved that. Why didn't he think of that? Two, I'm guessing is a situation for Boyd where he's in this moment. I can't imagine how like sleep deprived he is. And he's not even thinking about like, you know, how can I always be an action hero? I think this is already Fromville wearing him down, where he's starting to actually believe this message of you can't save them all, which is pretty sad because I think in his heart, Boyd wants to save them all. He is, you know, he's an imperfect character, but I think he's as much of a prototypical hero as anyone in this town is. And just like Jim is just smashing as many random things as he can, Harold is basically getting to just yell as much as possible in every single episode.
And say F in every episode. Nobody says F like Harold.
I know. Listen, Harold has been doing this, exclaiming either curse words or pure curses ever since Romeo and Juliet. Like, he's really, really good at this guy.
Okay, I want to talk about one other moment that really, like, hit me in my feels.
Okay.
And that was Donna breaking down. Donna never breaks down. She's always sort of, she's the Boyd of Colony House, where she's tough. She tries to hold it together because other people are unable to hold it together. So she holds it together for everyone.
Yep.
And the fact that she took Boyd as the person into the room to like have this private breakdown with after losing Nikki, that she just couldn't hold it in anymore. I mean, I love their friendship. I know that they're sort of at opposite ends, and she has said before to be like, hey, you know, people are going to start thinking we're friends or something. She's always making these jokes, but like their connection is so special. And it was nice to see that the person she reached out to just let it all out was Boyd.
I love that scene too. And I think it's just another reminder that at least pre whatever's going to happen here with Randall, while there were a lot of disagreements, there was also this sense in this community that, hey, we're all in this together. We may not always have the right standpoint of, you know, what should we do about the monsters? What should we do to handle X, Y, or Z? But there is that feel of, you know, this is still a community. Even if we disagree on things, we're going to be there for each other when things get rough. And that scene was this great reminder of it. And now I'm just afraid that Randall was going to come in with like a hacksaw and just like start like splitting everybody up.
Okay, let's talk about Fatima and her vampirism. So I think we all kind of felt like maybe this was coming. I mean, before the season started with the trailer, I was like, oh, people are going to be on the menu. but not for this reason. I thought that it was going to be they were going to run out of food and people would be on the menu.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was going to be Fatima has a baby that people have to be on the menu for. And it's made me really sit back and wonder what is going on with this baby. Is this something where it's like an evil baby that's feeding on, fear and destruction and the rot of what's going on in this town? Or is there something else? Because she has said that she was unable to have children at all. Then she's in Fromville, and now all of a sudden she's pregnant. And she assumes that it's Ellis's because that's the only person that she's with.
Yeah.
But then there's part of me that's kind of like, well, what if this baby was put in there through Fromville? And she doesn't know, and she wouldn't know until the baby is born.
There's a lot that's going on with Fatima at this point. My feeling is that Fromville wants to give her something to be excited about, the idea of having this baby that she didn't think was possible. And then they want to do everything that they can to make it so that it's the worst experience possible, to the point where she starts to question herself, starts to question her sanity, starts to think that this baby is predestined to be evil and awful, and doing these sort of things where, at this point in the middle of this scene, you could have had Matt Berry show up and invite her to New York City. But it's just a situation where going pure vampirism in this moment, and the aftermath of it, she's going to be like, what's wrong with me? What's happening? What's happening with this baby? She's not able to talk to anybody about it just because it's something that's so dark and so twisted. I mean, the closest thing she's gotten is Tilly in the cards. Like, there's still not really a lot of venues that she can talk about what she's going through. So this is Fromville isolating her, making her more fearful as to what exactly is happening with their baby. And then eventually this is probably going to get really, really dark in a way that does not make me comfortable at all.
Yeah, I think this is Fromville feeding into fears where it's like, oh, she knew she couldn't have kids before she got here. Now she has this kid. Now every single fear that she could possibly have during pregnancy is all coming out. I mean, it's one thing to have Tilly being like, hey, I used to lick the inside of eggs.
Yeah.
This is not the same thing. She is, having this blood from a human. Like, it is not anywhere in the same vicinity of licking an egg. So there really is no one she can speak to about this.
One more person I want to talk about, because I don't think we've talked about it too much this season, is Elgin. Because Elgin is still seeing some pretty darn twisted stuff at this point. And he's admittedly one of the people in the community I've struggled the most to figure out. Just because it feels like a lot of what he's seeing you can kind of attribute to, oh, this is the sort of stuff you'd see in a lot of horror movies. Like, this is, okay, he's seeing monsters, things that are going to make him afraid. And I'm sort of sitting back and thinking, he seems to be one of the more rational, intelligent people in the town. Is this just a pretty singular way of unraveling him? Or is there something else about him that's making him special that I'm just not getting?
Yeah, I think we need more about him. Like, he does seem like one of the more level-headed people in the town, even though he is seeing this woman in this robe over and over again. He's trying to talk about it a little bit, but there's just he doesn't have enough information. And he's handling this in a way that, like, I don't know how anyone would be able to handle this as cool-headed as he does. But I need more on him. I really do. Like, it's time. He's been part of this show for 2 seasons now, and I don't really know anything about him.
That's sort of one of the issues. And in general, I think this season has been really, really good, and there's not a lot of major flaws, especially in an episode like this. But the things that I'm coming out of this episode wanting more of are, number one, clearly more Elgin.
Yeah.
Number two, I mean, we've got Henry in the town now. And so now you guys are just teasing us.
I know.
With this reunion. Nobody has come and found Victor to tell him what is going on. And I understand it's the middle of the night and there's monsters and all of that. You better give us this reunion next episode.
I'm very concerned what this reunion is going to look like, because the last time Victor saw his dad is, he would have been like 8, 9, something like that. Very, very young. Victor looks like he's about my age now. So like 49, 50, somewhere around there. being reunited with a parent, especially Victor, who still has the mind of a child with a lot of what he's seen and things that he's had to do. I don't know what that reunion looks like. Like, I feel like Henry's gonna be like, oh my goodness, I can't believe I'm so excited. And Victor's just gonna be like, Victor, I don't know you. I don't have a relationship with you. I don't know how to handle this. His mind is broken. So I've got my hard hat on because I'm a bit worried that the reunion that I want, where I see Victor running down the street into his dad's arms and having this like beautiful moment, is not going to be exactly what I hope it's going to be, but that it'll get there.
Yeah, my fear is that Victor's going to see his dad and think the town is playing a game with him. And
Mhm.
I think that's why Tabitha is going to be really, really important. And this is my
Yeah.
advice for you, Tabitha, if you're watching this video half an hour in, be there for that reunion so that you can help to assure Victor that this is real. He's still going to be going through a lot, just like you said, in response to all of it. I mean, anybody would if you're in Fromville or not. But I think if he can sort of start to understand the reality of this situation, that his father's really there, maybe they can talk more about
Mhm.
Miranda and we can
Yeah.
get like a few more clues as to how to actually get out of this situation.
Henry, I think, is going to be key to actually moving this along and finding a way out of here. I think he's going to have so many answers that people at the town don't have, and Henry's not going to realize he does have until he starts seeing things and is able to give them information that they don't have.
Well, here we are. We are almost at the halfway point of this season. At the end of episode 5, we'll be there. So let's cross our fingers, hope for some answers. But what a good episode this time
Yeah.
around. But hit that subscribe button now so you guys don't miss any of our coverage of the rest of From this season, as well as we mentioned earlier, a lot of other awesome horror themed programming right now in between Grotesquerie, Teacup, Sweet Pea. And you can support us further by joining our Patreon. A link is in the description
Mhm.
below. We're covering the Penguin exclusively there. Thank you to all of our patrons,
Thank you.
and we'll see you here next time.